It should be obvious that we cannot solve a crisis with the same methods that got us into it in the first place.
This is a last chance saloon. Because if we don't really take the decisions that are vital now, it's going to be almost impossible to catch up.
We will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon
East Talk. Hello and welcome to Zerocarbonista, Series 4, Fool's Gold. I'm Ian Collins and this is the UK's #1 environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. Let's speak to our man whose diary is busier than Joe Biden's right now with his handsome basket of environmental delights. He's the green entrepreneur, environmentalist, Dale Vince. I don't know where I was going with that, Dale, to be honest.
Well, who cares, right?
Who cares? Yeah, and absolutely right. And
I'm still here thinking, well, I've got a better memory than Joe Biden, at least, right, with his black and tan gaffe earlier.
I know, that was a bit kind of odd. I know what his mind was thinking, and, you know, there might have been some people in the crowd thinking, yeah, I'm happy with that.
There were, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to get through here, and the list of things that you're up to is pretty endless, because we will talk not just about the printed word, but about the visual appearance of your good self. But we'll come to that in a second. Let's talk about net zero, and campaigners saying that targets will be missed, partly because of planned road building sprees that are going on. I mean, this surely is, again, I know it's under the category of tell us something we didn't know. This government might be a bit f***ed up in the way it thinks about things, but it just goes completely in the face of what they say they are doing.
Yeah, when I first read this headline, I thought, oh, yeah, it's one of those tell us something we don't know, because we will miss the target, right? I mean, that's a fact. But pinning it on road building was an interesting new twist. And what's happened is the government have released revised figures for the impact of transport, the transport sector, on our carbon footprint. And they've added 26 megatons or million tons more CO2 than they first projected. And the reason, the culprit for that, is actually they've found that plug-in hybrids emit more carbon, 3 to 5 times more carbon in the real world than they do on tests. And so they've really updated the projections for the real world effect of hybrid cars.
Got it.
And this makes transport is now the #1 carbon dioxide contributor in the UK. And back in
Is that right?
Yeah. It used to be energy. Back in the 2000s, when we came up with energy, transport, and food as the 3 big things within which there's 80% of all carbon impact. Energy was first, transport was second, food was third. But actually, the energy sector was cleaned up. 50% of our electricity now comes from renewables, and transport is the leading contributor.
Yeah.
But within this story, there's also more madness from our government. The Department of Transport has created a new policy telling decision makers to ignore the climate impact of new roads when they give them consent. And if that's not enough, they say, but you can consider the beneficial impact of planting trees alongside new roads towards biodiversity targets and stuff like that. I mean, on top of the coal mine in Cumbria and the vast new oil and gas fields in the North Sea. I mean, this is a government that doesn't give a shit about the climate crisis, clearly.
Do you know what? If I didn't know different, Dale, I'd think this government was run by a bunch of
But it's mad, isn't it? It just, the whole picture is so maddening. They do everything that shouldn't be done and practically nothing that should be done. How do they think it makes sense?
What I don't get, even if you take the kind of specific characters in the government out of the equation, there are some, very impressive, we are told, people around, advisors. Somebody must flag this stuff up at a meeting somewhere around an impressive old oak table in Whitehall and say, right, you're trying to reduce car usage. We're trying to get people into different modes of vehicle. We want to go big on public transport. We've got a net zero promise. But we're simultaneously going to not only build new roads, we're literally going to tell those building them to not even care about the environmental impact.
It is mad. I got a feeling that they're just prioritizing economic growth over everything else. And they think that roads and oil fields and coal mines is all about, it's old-fashioned economic growth. We know that. And that's what they're focused on.
Yeah. But I mean, if a kid was thinking that way at school, the teachers would call in the social workers, wouldn't they? They'd go, look, I've got a child here. There's something not quite right going on. That's how ridiculous this is. I mean, it's an easy thing to spot, and yet it carries on it seems without challenge.
It's just incredible.
This one's back on the agenda. We love a heat pump story,
we do.
Dale, and here's another.
Yeah, great story I read last week. A bunch of campaigners and one of those consultancies and actually a heat pump manufacturer have come together to produce a kind of letter. They sent a letter to Grant Shapps, actually, to say, whatever you do, don't allow hydrogen blending in the gas grid. There's a proposal to allow about 20% of that. Don't allow it because it allowed a couple of £100 to annual energy bills. Household energy bills, because we've got better alternatives like heat pumps. And you know what I can't understand, these are all professional people apparently, and they just glibly say that heat pumps are a cheaper alternative, and they clearly haven't looked at the impact of a heat pump. They say that hydrogen is more expensive than fossil fuel gas, without realizing that electricity is more expensive than fossil fuel gas, and your use of electricity will triple with a heat pump. They just haven't crunched the numbers. So I just find it kind of galling, really, that there's this big move to stop the 20% blending, which actually is a good idea, as long as we make that 20% hydrogen from excess renewable electricity when, obviously when we don't need it, we can turn it into hydrogen. It just makes great sense, and then augment green gas in the gas grid.
Well, of course, Shappsys is involved in this, which I find, of no surprise at all. He's a lot of things. I know he's not a stupid bloke, and I can absolutely see, and I saw a former minister do this, I think it was Owen Paterson, I think you might have had some dealings with over the past, but he was talking on the back benches, and he came out with the line, he said, now I'm not in the cabinet, I can speak with the freedom of a backbencher. And I can't remember what the specific policy was, but I can kind of see a time when Grant Shapps will be that person. He'll say that now I'm not wedded to this kind of collective responsibility lark. I can actually tell you now that I always thought the heat pump idea was a crock of shit. I can hear him saying it. Because he must know that, because all the evidence is there to show it.
I don't think they've seen evidence. I think they've been lobbied by heat pump manufacturers successfully and told that that's the answer. And now they're being lobbied by the hydrogen lobby to create a hydrogen levy on fuel bills in order to support the kind of early adoption of blue hydrogen production and that kind of stuff, which I think we're going to talk about in a minute a little bit further. But, this whole hydrogen economy stuff is just another one of those kind of unicorn technologies like carbon capture and storage, where we're pinning our hopes on stuff that, doesn't exist either at all or at scale, when we've just got simple alternatives to do things differently.
Well, let's tie that in. Hydrogen made with fossil fuels will be considered clean energy. I mean, how many more of these stories can we read? It seems that there's a Shappsy not just here, but all over the bloody world. Right. Because this is, again, 6-year-old mathematics and physics will tell you otherwise, but don't let that stop certain politicians from just simply making it up as they go along. So throw some fossil fuels in, but as long as the word hydrogen is there, we can call it clean energy.
Yeah, it's interesting because this comes from the IEA, the International Energy Agency, who often publish quite sensible stuff. I think they're the people that said recently we need to stop drilling for new oil and gas if we're going to hit zero carbon targets. So, fair play for that one. But blue hydrogen is made from fossil fuels. And it emits more methane, actually, than using fossil fuels does, directly for heat, for example. Blue hydrogen has 20% higher emissions overall than gas or coal if it's used directly for heat, and 60% more than diesel. So we can't use it for heat. It would be madness to do that. These are guidelines from the IEA to try and encourage investment in the production of blue hydrogen, and they're saying as long as it's got less than 7 kilograms of CO2 for 1 kilogram of hydrogen, they're okay with it. But it relies on carbon capture and storage to remove 90% of the carbon emissions involved in the process to get it down to roughly 3 kilograms. Without that carbon capture, it's 30 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen. It's absolutely mad. And we know that carbon capture and storage doesn't exist at scale. It's not economic, and it's at the heart of the blue hydrogen plan. I mean, I think it's mad.
We need to call those social workers quickly, don't we? We need to get those guys in a bit lively. Something is upside down here. Dale, it's time for this.
Hi, I'm Mike Graham from Talk TV, and I've been asked to tell you about green issues and a new book called Manifesto. It's brilliant, apparently. Do you believe in climate change? I don't. Do you believe we all need to find a greener way of living our lives? No, I don't either. I think it's all a load of guff perpetuated by loony lefties and eco-zealots hell-bent on causing a nuisance. Do you believe we're all killing our beautiful planet? No. Neither do I, but I know a fellow who does. His name's Dale Vince. He's so convinced he's written a whole book about it called Manifesto. The Battle for Green Britain. It's part memoir, part handbook for changing the world and shaking it up. apparently. I won't be buying it, but you can if you want to waste your hard-earned cash. It's $4.99. Pretty cheap, isn't it? You must be wealthy as hell. According to this script, it's available now from fgr.co.uk/shop.
Do you reckon he secretly bought a copy?
I reckon he has. I think he's a secret eco nut. Do you know what I mean? He's a closet Greta, is what I reckon. I hope he's listening.
Well, you never know. He might well be next week, because I know you're going to be there. Extinction Rebellion. It's a timely moment just to reference that. What's happening?
Yeah, I think they're calling it the big one. It's a big march in London next Friday. And hopefully, shitloads of people are going to turn up and cause disruption and bring attention to the issue and that kind of stuff. But I love the advert that Mike did. I got to say, I watch it when I want to cheer myself up. It just makes me laugh.
Well, he might be on the march. That was my point. I think he could be there. There'll be there'll be people like Stephen Fry, and I reckon secretly squirreled away in the crowd, maybe wearing a balaclava.
Or part of a counter-protest, right? American style.
Maybe he's one of those.
He'll be marching down the street with his mock AK-47.
Yeah, just shouting in people's faces, bitch, because that's how they do it, isn't it? That's all they have to say. Just keep repeating that like some crazy mantra. And apparently that works to enhance your campaign. Here's a question that comes in from Leslie on Twitter. One for the podcast. Vegan pizza. Does it work for you, Dale?
It kind of does, actually, but I tend to have it without cheese, and I've been doing it for a long time. And I had it in Italy once, decades ago, and they told me that was actually an Italian way to have it lunchtime because it's lighter food. So it's not even a new invention. You're probably referring to like vegan cheese on a pizza, and it's okay, but I actually tend to find that just a good pizza without cheese is better.
So you just leave the cheese out of it anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
Fair point. Here's another headline, Dale. World's ocean surface temperature hits record high. And I know that's something that won't particularly surprise you.
Yeah, it's not shocking, but the numbers are shocking. And, the temperature has hit an all-time high since records began. Average temperature of 21.1 degrees across the entire world since the start of April. I mean, that's a bit warm, right? Considering it's got two poles in there as well. And according to scientists, the trajectory looks like it's headed off the charts. And so what we've got now is just a little piece of what's coming.
Yeah. We move from the book bugle to this. It's the TV trombone. Because that tells us...
Because there had to be another wind instrument, right?
Correct. It's got to be wind-based, clearly. And that makes perfect sense for lots of reasons. But in addition to releasing a book and all the other things that are going on with the world of football and energy and politics, there's a new TV show out there.
There is with BT Sport. And I think it's a three-parter. We've been shooting it over the last few months. I'm the kind of like the host and the narrator. And it involves 6 BT Sports presenters, 2 at a time, 2 in each episode. Yep. And, I get to grill them about the way they live, the things they do. And then we get to chat about alternatives and stuff. And it was a really fun experience. And I think 3 of the 6 people went out and bought electric cars off the back of it, which is incredible kind of change. I mean, it looks like a great little series. It's going to carry the message to a good audience, a sporting audience, I think.
Definitely.
It was fun to make.
Do you know what I found really annoying about it?
No.
And I say this in my capacity as a sort of TV and radio presenter. What I found really annoying is that you were actually really bloody good at it as well. I just thought, this bloke looks like he's been doing it for years. And I think there is something about, if somebody is on territory that they're familiar with, when they get TV programs presented by the wrong people because somebody just wants to squeeze in a comedian or a well-known actor, and they don't really give a shit whether that person is wedded to the subject matter. They just need the name or the face. And because this is your territory, that clearly comes through. I mean, it's a no-brainer. They should have got somebody like yourself to front this, and it really does work.
Yeah, nice. I really enjoyed making it. The voiceover was almost the most fun part, actually. I've never done that before, like in the next episode, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Yeah. But all the people I interviewed, nearly all of them, sat in the chair getting ready to be filmed, and they were all like, oh, this is a bit intimidating. They thought I was going to go full Jeremy Paxman on them,
Asking them 15 times what they had for
But I'm
them.
not like that, right? It's not about guilt and finger pointing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's about a conversation. I had some great conversations, and just,
I'm sure.
It was so interesting actually to understand how they see things as well as what they do.
Yeah.
And to get the chance to like offer them facts, like key statistics always make a big difference. And, I loved it. It was great fun.
We urge everyone to
go watch.
We would absolutely urge everybody, make it a rule of thumb that you check that out on BT Sport. Best foot forward now screening. There it is. Here's another headline we spotted, Dale. Canadian banks become the world's dirtiest bankers. And it's interesting, isn't it? When you sort of start to design the whole web of question marks surrounding the environmental debate. We talk a lot on this podcast, clearly about energy. We talk a lot about food, which is something I know you're very passionate about, and its relevance to this debate, which is absolutely huge. But we don't often talk about dirty money, which is absolutely connected to this.
No, absolutely. First off, I thought you dirty bankers is something your old Nan would say. That's a slur straight out of her playbook. And that made me laugh. But quite seriously, the role of money in the climate crisis cannot be overestimated. Money drives the world. It drives investment in the wrong things, for example, and politicians allow that. They allow big companies and small companies to make money by investing in the wrong things. Bankers are behind, most of the gargantuan, climate bad projects that we see happening around the world, because, the funding for that comes from bankers. And, the Canadians, they've got top spot in the Dirty Banker League. And, I think that's quite funny.
Well, anyone that has the grizzly bear as a king emblem, frankly, is to be
the grizzly or the grizzly.
Steer away from that place.
That's a bit grizzly.
This from Dylan, who says, "Are you getting out on the road in your camper van this summer? Any updates on the project, Dale?"
Yeah, I've had a couple of cancellations. I was meant to go and have a test drive this coming Monday, and before that, maybe a month ago, the guys hit some problems with the bodywork. Actually, nothing technical. It's in the spray booth now, and that's somehow been delayed. And I'm going there in 3 or 4 weeks, and it should be just about done, bar some proper road trials. So, short and long of the story is it's nearly ready, and it will be ready for the summer.
Fantastic. Headline I didn't think I'd see, particularly at the moment. Americans are growing less convinced that humans are causing climate change. And the reason that wouldn't have surprised me a couple of years ago, but I thought they kind of got over that phase and they were moving in a different direction, but apparently not.
Yeah, post-Trump, you might think things have got better. But this is a snapshot over a 5-year period. And it does say 74% believe in climate change, but only 49, call it 50%, think it's man-made, which is a bit of a shocker, right? Half the country thinks it's not man-made, but nearly 3/4 think it's a big deal. Yeah. And amazingly, only 40% would pay a paltry $1 a month to help fix it. Only 40% of Americans would stump that up.
Really? $1 a month?
$1 a month. They want a lot for the dollar,
$12 a year
don't
to save the planet. It's like, no, I'm sorry, boy, that's too expensive.
So yeah, lovely snapshot of American psychology there.
That's a beauty. Back to the TV show, because a question from Jeremy says, "I've just seen the trailer for your new BT Sports show. Loving your narrator voice. Which you just alluded to, you enjoyed doing the voiceover stuff. What's the best bit about making the show?"
I want to say the narration was definitely the most fun part, but I think the conversations, I had a great conversation with Hugo, the ex-rugby player, for example, really deep conversation about the role of protest actually in society and that kind of stuff, which, I try to have them conversations on Right Ring Radio and usually get shouted down. But with him, we had a decent conversation about the fact that so many people are simply frustrated that they can see what's happening and they could do nothing about it. And the only alternative they have is to protest. And surely they've got a right to do that.
It's interesting that absolutely interesting that one of the best bits was you enjoyed doing the voiceover stuff that you mentioned there, and that's for me when I do stuff. That's the bit I enjoy least. I get in that booth and I can't quite get my head around it. It's just such a weird. It's never lost on me, Dale, that you're in a sealed, padded room when you're in one of those things. There's quite a relevance there, I think.
And you hope to get out. But I'd never done it before, so I got in the booth and they handed me a script like I'd never seen before, and each kind of speaking part had a kind of a timing for it. So there's like a whole bunch of words describing when to start speaking, then a bunch of words to speak. And to begin with, I was thinking, fuck, I'm never going to do this. Like, I'm trying to watch the screen, read the cue to say, you know, when is the right cue, and then say the right words in the right timing. It was daunting.
It's a discipline, isn't it, in itself, that you never think about until you're asked to do it.
I think so. And I'd done the audiobook recording for Manifesto and really learned a lot from that. The guy in the studio kind of, you know, gave me a lot of coaching. And so I could do the voice. So it was really just about the timing. And honestly, I enjoyed it. By the end, it was just like, you know, give me another gig. I love this.
Yeah, well, Del is available for commercials, advertising, 4x4s, chocolate, and
coal mines.
steak and kitty pies, and holidays in the coal mines. Take your family. Here's a headline. Before we do a final question, tech startup using AI to create the next generation of vegan cheese. AI is the big thing right now. Apparently, we haven't even got any idea of how this is going to change our lives, but we're now getting clues. And apparently, it's going to create the next, vegan cheese, which we alluded to in a previous question that we had from Leslie about cheese and pizzas.
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, I think there's already some great vegan cheese out there. But fundamentally, to me, all cheese is made from two things, fat and bacteria. And I think, you know, nutritionally, that's not great. And I think that, you know, vegan food is a chance to improve nutrition if we don't seek to mimic animal products too madly, like with burgers and stuff like that. But having said that, I love the AI angle here. The guys behind it are saying it would take millions of years to achieve the same result through experimentation as they can do with AI. They're basically going to look at the properties of all plants and the properties of all animal cheeses and find a match so they can make an animal fake cheese with just plants rather than precision fermentation or all kinds of, you know, other intensive, odd processes. I mean, I love the idea. I just don't think we need a whole load of cheese in the world.
Well,
that's all.
That's just the title of a new West End farce, isn't it? We don't need no cheese. But there's the other question that comes on the back of that about the kind of lab-made meat, which I think we've touched on before. So eventually this will be made and it will no animal will be harmed or killed or anything like that, but they will be able to produce a fillet steak on a plate that will absolutely taste like the best ever. Now, that's good in the sense that no one dies in the process, but of course, you're still eating something that resembles an animal. So I would imagine you would still swerve that.
Yeah, it's a nutrition issue for me. You know, that's if you look at burgers that mimic meat right now, they're full of saturated fat and salt. They mimic the meat burger by having those bad ingredients.
That's true. Fundamentally.
And that's why I say it's the same about cheese. It's only made of fat and bacteria, whether it's cow fat or like nut fat, who cares? It's still basically not a very healthy product, I would say. And lab-grown meat, well, yeah, there's all kinds of hideous really in it. I mean, at least it won't drive as much climate change. And it doesn't have animal cruelty in it, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, do we really need it? Because plant-based food is a massive opportunity to move away from bad food, unhealthy food.
Yeah.
And that's where I stand on it.
Fair point. And finally, Seb says, Dale, what's your situation with Gazprom? Has your contract ended yet? Tell us more, Dale.
The height of the energy crisis. Well, no, it wasn't the energy crisis, really. It was the kind of let's boycott everything Russian
that's right,
episode that we had around the world, didn't we? You know, and including vodka, you know, and stuff like that. I would proudly go into a pub and ask for a Smirnoff just for the hell of it. But that's just me. And, you know, we were asked if we had dealings with Gazprom. They're a gas trader in Britain. And we did. We had a small contract with them. We looked at it. The cost of cancelling it would have run into many millions of pounds gifted to them, which didn't seem to be the idea of a boycott, right? That was meant to hurt them, not give them money. So we said, we'll let it run down. I assume it's run out. I haven't checked, but it only had, I think, 6 to 8 months left to run a year or so ago. I mean, I could go and check, but I think it's gone. I will check, actually.
Good work. Dale, that's it for this one. We'll speak in a week.
Well, that was fun. Thank you.
Indeed. Have a great week, Dale. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Leave a review there too. Really important bit, follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and on Insta and on TikTok. Don't forget the book and the TV show too. We'll see you next week.
Zero Carbon
East of.